Towards the end of the PSP's lifespan, before Sony had announced the PS Vita, everyone just kind of speculated what the next Sony handheld would look like. So as is most often the case, a bunch of concept art just started popping up all over the internet. It's funny because this thing actually looks like it came right out of a PSP2 concept art. What's going on, guys? Ness here. Today I'm going to be taking a look at the Much 78P01 Android gaming smartphone. Yeah, you heard right. This thing is actually a cell phone, whose appearance and aesthetic draws heavily from the PlayStation Portable, which is actually another thing that people thought the PSP2 would have, cell phone capabilities. But just because it looks like a PSP and kind of feels like a PSP in your hands, does it actually live up to the legendary handheld? Let's take a closer look. Inside the box, you have the Much 78P01 itself, a power brick, a micro USB cable, and a bunch of paperwork. The console has 4 face buttons, 2 analog sticks, a directional pad, as well as a start, select, home, and back button, as well as a front-facing camera. The face buttons aren't labeled by geometric shape or designated by a letter. Instead, they have these really awkward symbols. It also has 2 shoulder buttons, a volume rocker, and a headphone jack. On the back, you have a speaker as well as your 8 megapixel camera. The back of the phone snaps apart, revealing the housing for the battery, as well as a slot for a micro SD card, as well as 2 SIM cards. This thing is not capable of 4G, so if you plan on using this as a cell phone, 3G is as good as it's going to get for you. Under the hood, it's got an MTK 6592 octa-core, 2 GB of RAM, 16 GB of internal storage, and is running Android 4.2. Pretty underwhelming specs, but according to the paperwork, it states that this thing has been out since 2015, so I guess it gets a pass in that department. The screen is a 5-inch IPS 1280x720 touch display, and is actually not bad. It's running a pretty flat version of Android, with a couple of alterations added by the manufacturing company. So I went ahead and loaded this thing up with some emulation, and let's see how well it actually performs. Starting with the console that it's made to resemble, I went ahead and ran some PSP emulation. Running a more graphically demanding game like God of War, this thing was not having it. Even with frame skip activated, it still played like trash. Tekken struggled a bit as well, but once you activated frame skip, it was actually playable. It didn't have any problems running a game like Need for Speed though, so I guess if you're going to emulate PSP, you just need to have some low demand games. Up next, I'm running Dreamcast emulation through RetroArch. And for the record, I am fully aware on how to turn off the on-screen overlays. However, for this video, I will be leaving them on. A game like Power Stone seemed to run really good, very playable, and was close to full speed. Now this thing does not have access to the Play Store, and it has its own weird marketplace that has a bunch of games that you can actually download. Unfortunately, most of the games play like this. We're very reminiscent of Flash games from the early 2000s. Some of them are actually quite fun though. So the Much 78P01. It may look like the PSP's oddball cousin, but this thing can actually stand on its own 2 feet when it comes to emulation. Honestly, I just really don't see the purpose of a product like this. With there being so many different ways to use your cell phone as a gaming console, I don't see the point in having built-in dedicated controls. I mean, the fact that it looks like a PSP is pretty cool, and it seems to run certain emulation fairly well. But honestly, you can probably buy a $50 Android phone that can outperform this thing. Even 5 years ago, this concept was pretty dated. If you're a fan and or a collector of obscure handhelds, then this one's definitely worth a look. It's pretty neat, but it absolutely sucks as a cell phone, and it's very underwhelming as a gaming console. I would say just get a decent Bluetooth controller for whatever cell phone you're using right now. I guarantee it will perform just as good if not better than this thing. But if any of you guys are interested in the 78P01, I will put a link to it in the description below. Until next time, this is Ness, signing out.